The Moon Knight really isn't much of an icon in the comic world, if he is at all. But Marc Spector, who is the persona of the Moon Knight, he who guides those that walk the night. Moon Knight is literally what I would call the opposite of Batman, and without further ado, let's look at what he really is like. The entire story or issue with Mark comes from the neglect from his father. As simple as it was briefed, Mark's father, Rabbi Spector, was a highly orthodox man who lived a peasant lifestyle in Chicago because he had to flee the Holocaust. Mark's mom wasn't there because she had died giving birth to him. Because of this, his father resented him, which is a common thing. Knowing the biological hypergamous nature of women, it is hard to see one who would love or will love you for you rather than your resources to the point of being vulnerable enough to have a child for you. This man must have loved her dearly and depended on her for mental strength, but for the fact he resented a child his dead wife gave him speaks a lot about him. And of course, the son goes looking for a way to be validated, and I will make a bold assumption to say he isn't above 15 at this time in his life. During this journey, his son finds out he is good at something like boxing, joining the army, and mercenary, which is basically being good at violence, and people love him for it. But this will he had for such was much greater than everyone else to show how much drive he carried behind killing. But Khonshu loved him the most for that. A perfect avatar to do his will of taking vengeance in the name of justice. Mark would use the title of superhero to kill, justifying his actions in the name of vengeance, which is the will of God's name, Khonshu. Mark met Khonshu through his lifestyle by dying in an underground room where the statue of Khonshu dwelt. Khonshu revived him as his avatar to take vengeance rather than justice, somewhat an anti-hero or anti-villain. Anti-hero. But the more he kept doing this, then the less he wanted to be his avenger for a god. A man who doesn't wear white to hide himself, but rather to let everyone know his presence. And when they see the white, it doesn't matter how good this target is, they won't be able to hit the moon. Mark lives his life grateful of Khonshu. Mark isn't a team player, but he appreciates help, friendship, a home, a church, and love. Aside vengeance, the little of these things makes him feel human and gives him the drive to keep pushing on until it was all taken from him by Khonshu. His life lost its meaning, and all he did was stay on a wheelchair for 2 years and kept begging to be a hero once more. Mark keeps fighting this particular man called Bushman, the man who hurts him and left him in the deserts to walk miles and eventually die. This man doesn't give up no matter how many times he loses to the Moon Knight. As his life starts to get miserable, as he starts to get sloppy, he looks for what to blame rather than himself. They're both hatred which originated from the same passion of work long in the past. But he can only hate one thing, which is the reflection in the mirror, which is himself, but rather blame it on a god. He wonders how much more battles and spilling of blood he has left to do. People fear him more than they fear God. A man who wears an Egyptian relic clothing and runs around at night playing superhero, but kills without remorse in the name of justice through vengeance, but doesn't hide it, but rather lets everyone see. Well, that's something to truly fear. Even horror monsters hide themselves. It is better to be killed by something you can't see rather than a tall, muscular serial killer validating his actions like a child openly killing during every night, as if it were forever horror Halloween. But Mark can hardly escape these fates because Khonshu makes sure he is revived to do his work. But finally, his prayers came true, and his life became miserable because all he had was attached to who he had become. It is funny how wealthy this guy is and has a whole sort of bat cave of his own, likely bigger than that of Bruce Wayne. He has multiple armor wears or costumes, multiple weapons and gadgets. I mean, he takes his limo to the crime scene. Bat uses a Batmobile. Talk about classy, but when it comes to fighting him, well, then there's an issue. If you aren't willing to die like it's a meal to eat, then don't bother. He is extraordinarily strong to start from there. The will of Khonshu follows him. Duke can jump out of a building and not die as long as Khonshu is on his side. Just like when he was in doubt of Khonshu, he broke his bones from a building top down to the ground. But aside that, he basically has mastery of all martial arts, and even Taskmaster can't copy his unique fighting style despite having photographic reflexes. He can't win against him. Mark has good speed as well as insane endurance to pain, and is willing to take critical damage, and everyone who fights him begs for mercy except Bushman. And as we can see, even Khonshu, using Bushman's body, tells Mark that he wishes he used Bushman because Mark really isn't like that, as Mark keeps waking up from this vague consciousness he carries. But he owes the God, as the God has given him all he wants, including his life. Mark is a man stuck in the reality that forcefully makes him do things for the God because he owes him, and won't refuse because he still wants to experience that love he never had per se growing up. And truly, he was never this bad because he did fight Bushman for killing the innocent, and that one fight made him end up like this. And that's why he dislikes Bushman so much. The blood he will spill, the blood yet to be spilled, and the answer doesn't change. How else can he live? And he has very good fighting adaptive sense. If he must fight like an animal to beat one, then he will. So we just went over Mark's resolve. We just went over Mark's life resolve, how he passes through on the daily, and what is possible for him to overcome or not. The next thing we will be going over is basically how he thrives more in being more of a hero while under Khonshu than using vengeance to see how it turns out. Knowing this, it is important to know that this man's detective skills aren't mid at all. Working with one of the city's best detectives, and they need his help solving a case implying he is likely the best. This gives me Gordon and Batman vibes. He was able to tell the difference between a type of killer called slasher. Slashers usually kill a group of people traveling at night, if I remember clearly, but he could tell from the killing if the victim could fight back or not, implying he has done series of observations and studies of these killers and their killing patterns, which should all be synonymous to a non-disagreeable extent. He could tell from the types of victim what type of weapon was used, and can tell the intentions of the killers through just their weapons and cuts, and can tell the behavior of the killer and their next movement, can tell the distance, their height, weight distribution, and knows his city very well. The crazy thing is this dude still likes his victims. He sees The crazy thing is this dude still likes his enemies to see him coming. He gives all the smoke, man. He finds his villains and just trolls the guy. making him look like a retard, which is a cool way to add dead humor to a character who finds dying boring and doesn't care if he dies again. You see, where he doesn't joke with nobody, that's killing nightcrawlers, and that's the only shit he really cares about. And this dude is so slick and fast that he already beat his nemesis in 2 minutes without him realizing it by throwing his night rings off the wall, cutting the dude's legs and stabbing him. He is casually faster than bullets and his weapons are bulletproof. Now, to the part of where he tries changing fully from vengeance to actual justice. If you guys remember earlier when he was talking to Khonshu using Bushman's body, Khonshu was finding it hard to keep him focused on vengeance. But the real issue is because Marc Spector lost himself totally and started gaining himself back through the pleasures of life. His mind was taken over by an extra dimensional being or outer terrestrial entity. He was literally reprogrammed to be Khonshu on Earth. His mind was split into 4 personalities which he moves back and forth in, which are the Pathfinder, Embracer, Defender, and Watcher. He is colonized by a being beyond space and time. I guess with this, you all are starting to understand his character better, if not understood already. Also, it's cool to know the Moon Knight has all types of armor and weapons to deal with the living and the dead. This part of the story does a great job in further showing his transition from a brain damaged man who is struggling with reality and foreign personas within him. His father is driven to protect his city, and when he was in a hypnosis with this doctor, all she wanted to do was get revenge for the death of her people and family, while trying to use Moon Knight to do so, but also with the intent of fully making him fall victim to the aspect of his new change to become one with Khonshu herself as his agent of vengeance to strike back at her proclaimed enemy. As she even asked him if he chooses to go as he is now or be the man he was, the persona of vengeance. Moon Knight started talking about justice and telling her that justice can be served in an open method rather than killing him, which is vengeance, and the more he was pro-justice, then the more he gained his sanity and became less of what Khonshu is, while the doctor took over this persona. And after he meets up with her after speaking to Khonshu, which was a turning point because Khonshu wasn't against him anymore, and Khonshu rather seems to enjoy him being his agent, be it for justice or vengeance. He gets his act ongoing and talks to her about justice, telling her that her act of justice is just plain manipulation, in short, narcissistic behavior. Meanwhile, her telling her family were the cause of what happened to her community, and she only wanted the money her father stole from this community she was born into. It is important to know that Mark doesn't use a code, ethics, or discipline to fight crime. I've looked at the Moon Knight in terms of behavior, street tier abilities, and his incredible intellect. Now let's see how powerful Marc Spector could potentially be with the help of Khonshu. Now, not only is his collective willpower enough to solve half the human collective will in less than a day, but that also means his will and archetypal connections to humanity is far beyond multiversal. Each mind creates an infinite universe, and the human collective unconscious is responsible for the existence of God, eternity, and much more. That's some boundless shit right there. During the Serpent War, during the endless battle for dominance, this snake is powerful enough to destroy all of creation. The Yggdrasil and Odin also fought against this. This is a nightmare beyond existence. Marc Spector can easily amp himself by using the power of Khonshu from now and all possible futures, a piece of the moon, and used it to kill this boundless being. And reason he could do this is because Moon Knight has power from the collective unconscious, which I have explained too many times on this channel. He is the man, of many minds. Moon Knight is a better fighter than Taskmaster and Iron Fist. Can make use of the Fist of Khonshu, death dealing punches, and those are death dealing punches. And at the same time, at the time, he has full control of himself and his powers. This is what this dude could do while fully sane. He can steal power like Iron Fist, the Mortal Dragon Fist. He can raise the dead as mummies. Took Doctor Strange's magic, which is above high autoversal, and so on so many levels. Took Ghost Rider's power, which is another level of insane. Can control Mjolnir because it is made of ancient moon rock, which has power beyond creation, and tame the power of the Phoenix Force and beat Mephisto. Dude is a total menace. Moon Knight is the strongest and fastest street tier in Marvel, and with Amp, he has the most powerful god in the verse as his ally, meaning Moon Knight can be the most powerful mortal whenever he feels like it. The only god probably stronger than Khonshu, I think is stronger than Khonshu, is probably Nyx. Finished. Nobody else. Well, if you found this video informative, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and expecting more. Tomorrow you're getting Batman video, and every day there's a video coming, comic explanation, simple versus matchups. Then once in a while I'll upload like really heavy content. Yeah, see y'all next time. Peace.